Hello and welcome to Tight Lines. We're blessed by having so many top carp anglers who enjoy visiting me here on the show, and I'm always pleased to see them. This week, though, is exceptional, as my guest is Ian Macmillan, who not only ensures we have some fun and pass on some super knowledge and advice, but also make sure everything's shipshape in the body to boot, as well as all Ian's tips also coming up over the next hour. We'll be joining Ian on the bank for a session he spent just this week at Earlsview Fishery in Shropshire, where he set his sights on catching us a summer stunner. You can join me on a trip to the River Mersey in Warrington, where I spent the day with local matchman Dean Barlow to see just how far the once polluted waterway has come. I'll be taking my weekly look at the sport in store for all types of anglers in Fishery Focus. There'll be tips on what species you can expect to catch and how to catch them. And as July is now behind us, I'll also be revealing the latest crop of lucky winners in our Young Angler of the Month photo competition. If you sent us a picture, it could be you. It's good to see you, mate. Thanks for coming in.
Pleasure, mate, yeah. It's always a pleasure to come and see you, Keith.
Yeah, I do. I mean, I say that, and it's not being patronising. I enjoy your company. I think you're terrific.
Thank you.
And you catch some lovely fish, and you told me you're visiting a new water, and this is the first fish from it.
That was a spring shot, and it's not massive, just over £20. But it's the first one is always hard. It's a tricky little water. You know, a dozen fish a year is quite a good result. So I'm plodding along nicely, as they say, and that was the first one.
That is a real classic-looking, I would describe that as a classic English common carp.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's anything to beat them. They've got a little bit of the wild in them with those shallow backs and beautiful scales.
He's got a couple of war wounds, a couple of scales.
Yeah.
You know, he's got a lot of character to him. So, but there's a few mirrors. I mean, they go all the way up to mid-£50 in there.
Wow.
So they go from very sort of old classic fish like that to sort of stocked. You know, they've grown right through to mid-50. So. Massive, you don't know what you're going to get, so that's the excitement, you know. So they all mean something, whether it's a double,
brilliant,
or a 40 or a 50-pounder.
Great, we'll have a chat about that later on. Now, how you approach your fishing on a certain water is at least as important as the rigs and baits you use. To get some bankside tips from Ian earlier this week, we caught up with him and his mate Matt Preston, who were enjoying a nice little session at the lovely Earlsview Carp Fishery near Shrewsbury.
Good morning and welcome to a beautiful summer's morning right in the heart of Shropshire. We're an absolute gem of a fishery that's quite under the radar, but this little fella has already made my day. Lovely scaly mid-double, and we're going to focus more on the watercraft and where and how I caught him rather than the actual fundamental rigs. So about 13, 14 pound, we're going to slip him back and we're going to try and get another one for you. Certainly the fish use the margins an awful lot, and even when there's an island is just another margin. So this aerator, not only does it oxygenate the water, it disturbs the water, and carp are very, very inquisitive. So Matt has been baiting this whole margin, and he took the fish just off the reeds, which are just here next to the aerator. So the fish are just patrolling this margin, looking for food, and Matt's managed to nail one straight away. It's gone flat calm now, but the wind, as you can see, it's pushed all of this sort of film and the scum on the surface, it's pushed it all into this bank. And already we've seen signs of fish, and you can see the residue of bubbles. When the fish is shown on the surface, it creates like a film of bubbles that don't always disappear straight away. So this is a definite sign that the fish will follow all this. All the natural food that's up in the layers get pushed onto the windward bank, and it's definitely something to aim for and look for. You know, visual signs, something like this scum is perfect to follow. But already I can feel the breeze is slightly picking up from off my back, so it's going to push this away, and the chances are the fish will follow it. So always keep your eyes out for signs of things like Should be talking about today is the one I'm actually fishing on, and it's a raised gravel bar, and to the left and to the right of it it's 6 foot, and then it comes up into about 4 foot. It's about a rod length wide. It's just the same width as the point of the island, and it runs from the point of the island to this margin, and it's just a natural patrol. But when the fish are in and out of those islands, they'll follow the bar and then obviously cut left and right along both margins. So what I'm going to do, there's a few smaller fish that I've seen topping over the area. I'm going to put a few more spombs of bait out and hopefully get another bite. We chose a mix today, as you can see, loads of little kernels of hemp, some really bright yellow corn and some chopped monster tiger nut boilies, and it's just, there's lots of different sized particles in there to hopefully keep them grubbing around in the swim and not getting too preoccupied on the small hemp. So we're just going to put a couple more spombs out. Obviously use a scoop, then you don't get it all over your hands. You can see as the wind's picking up now and it's coming towards us, you can see how the line across from the island, across the main bar, what that's caused, that's the oil. It's only 4 foot deep on the top of that bar, and there's anything that's swimming over it or disturbing the oil that's coming out of the hemp and the mix, the oil obviously creates a slick or a flat spot on the surface, and you can clearly see that where the wind is hitting the oil and it's creating a flat area. So there's obviously fish either swimming right over it or actually feeding on it, and it's just kicking all the food up and creating what we call a slick. So we get another visual sign that there is fish in the area. Just fingers crossed we can nick another bite. Right, bit of a change of attack here. I found a pocket of about 12 to 15 fish, just this little back bay, and I'm just trying to flirt a couple of mixers upwind, just to see a couple took earlier very close to that bank. So whilst I'm not the best surface angler in the world, I'm all rigged up and I'm ready to go. So if you see steam coming out my ears a bit later, at least it gives Keith something to laugh about. So nothing ventured, nothing gained. I thought that was too early, the float didn't move. That was well struck. Right, we need to go on to this swim. I've got one on, and there's no weed, so technically I should get him in. And I don't really care how big it is, because I've hooked one on the surface, which for me is a massive achievement. As you can tell by the smile and grin. In fact, when I hooked it, I think me and Matt ran in different directions, because I think we were both amazed. Not quite ready. He's a little mirror. This is what surface fishing is all about. It's just the sheer excitement. Yes! Got him. Right, let's get him unhooked and have a little look at him. All right, there we go. He's still a bit angry, but what a way to finish a lovely day. Don't get out fishing with Matt much, and I've really enjoyed today, but this has capped it all off. Done a lot of hard work for this. They're very much a team effort, this, because I am rubbish at surface fishing, but I did manage to do my best Brian Scoyles there and nail it. much to Matthew's surprise. So yeah, stunning carp. We've had a couple for the cameras. I hope you've got loads of tips on watercraft, and I hope you put them into good use, because they will put you more fish on the bank. So I was going to ask you for some tips on surface fishing, Keith, but I've got Matt now, so I don't need you.
Oh, I see, you got your new mates. But funny enough, last week I was carp fishing on the fly.
Right.
And I'll tell you, mate, if you think that's tricky, on a fly, I was watching the fish. It was a proper fly as well. It was an imitation dog biscuit, but it was tied out for. And you see them coming up, and they go to take it, and they go, blow it out. But that was just. Get that fish up, see how excited you were. Was that you squealing in the background?
The squealing was Matt and me, because Matt ran one way and I ran the other, because we were both amazed, because I'd fluffed that many chances up. Yeah. We were both just amazed that I actually hooked one. But
the thing that you can't emphasise too much, I mean, I've some great carp anglers on here like you, and when I say what's the best thing you've got to do, location. Location. You can have all the posh rigs, you can have all the fancy bait. If you put it where there's no fish, where the fish don't want to be, you ain't going to catch them.
Like it was a massive team effort. I'd been trying for a couple of hours fishing into the wind. Yeah. And I'd fluffed a couple of chances, and then I'd sort of got a big bird's nest, and we had to redo something. And so Matt went round the other side on the back of the wind feeding mixers. And so he said, you've got to get round here, because we were pack-manning. Yeah. And so we just give it one more try. And luckily, that made the day. It really did. And Matt fed, I cast. You saw that I messed one chance up, but then we got it, and then we were both just the pictures and the elation were massive.
Welcome back, carp angler. Ian Macmillan is with me this week, and we were talking before the break, and we saw on that film how important finding where the fish are. Not necessarily are, but are likely to be before you start fishing. What if somebody said to you, give me one tip, I'm going to water for the first time, like for example, if somebody says to me, I'm going bream fishing, what should I do? I always say look for the widest bit, because bream are invariably in the widest bit. If somebody's going carp fishing, what's your first thing you tell them to look for?
Carp are quite visual creatures. They can't hide that easily, because some of them are quite big, and they can't help themselves. Once they feed, they have to jump out and show you where they are. So your eyes and your ears are without doubt probably one of the most important tools you have. But on the wind, there's always, but that's not again always the case, because if it's an easterly, they don't like them. West, southwest, southerlies, rain, drizzle. Textbook tips, really. Textbook watercraft tips are what you should be looking for. But those are without doubt. And they're free, you don't have to buy that from a tackle shop. If you watch, that's why you see a lot of good carp anglers watching the water. And when I do tuitions, and I've got somebody here that I'm teaching, but I'm sort of always looking ahead. Yeah. And I'm not being ignorant, and I tell them that because I'm always looking for signs of fish. Yeah. So it's if you're not on them, like you've said, you could have the best rig with the best tackle on the best lake in the world, but if you're not on the fish, or you haven't found them, then you ain't going to catch them.
It's amazing how many people don't learn that, because it's something that's been going on for years. I was just talking just now, Rev Richard McDonald's book, and that's written in the 80s about fishing in the 70s. Exactly the same thing, up trees, around the bank, 4 circuits of the lake, 4 deciding where to fish. Yeah. But that fish you caught on a floater, and that we saw in the film, the last fish, and as you said, very importantly, it was on the back of the wind, so you had the wind behind you. Yeah,
it was Matt's. I'd fished up against the wind, if you like, and I'd fluffed a few chances, and it was proving quite difficult, because it was twisting the whole rig. It was twisting the hook link around, like we were talking about. Yeah. And then Matt has gone and fed sort of with the wind coming off his back, and it just makes it so much easier. And it was, again, a team effort. Well, and I can't reiterate how rubbish I am at floater fishing, which is why we were so glad and happy when we caught one.
If we can... But even just that little film will change your outlook towards floater fishing, because you learnt something on that day. Yeah. And it doesn't matter how many times you go. Yes. If you learn something, and most times you can learn something.
It was proving quite difficult against the wind. Yeah. And it was so easy with the wind off the backs.
Let's explain why, shall we? Because if you work it out logically, and fishing is, you've got to apply some logic, although fish's natural reaction make a game of it. This is this controller, we'll call it, that we're using, which is a classic old-fashioned bubble float. It's a new take on the old-fashioned bubble float, but it's got a hole there, plug there, you pull that out, put water in, that's your casting weight, and it looks like a bubble, which is why it's called a bubble float. But this is, as I say, a modern version. The line goes through the middle. It's got a tube running through the middle, so everything's protected nicely. A swivel fits in the end there, so it breaks out, so it's entirely safe. And you've got a nice bit of tubing on the end there to keep everything in a straight line, so the line can't come back round it.
That's primarily why I started to use those bubble foods. Any other sort of control I use, I always used to get tangles.
Yes.
And I couldn't, no matter what I did, how long a tubing I put on to keep the hook link away, I always got tangles. So I've settled on the bubble float, and it just works. You know.
Now, I've been feeding through my hands while we were talking there the hook length, which is quite long. In this case, it's just over a metre, I would guess. We're using that length or longer.
That's only tied up just for ease of us messing with it here, but it was probably 6-7 foot.
Right. Now
a lot longer.
Now the reason why you're having trouble hitting the bites, the float will stay still because it's heavier. The floater will come back towards it. When the fish takes it, it's got all that line to straighten out before you've got to straighten out before you can set the hook.
I've never been that happy. I love to get them feeding, and I love to have a go.
Yeah.
But John Finch, who I sort of watched years and years ago at Lynch Hill floater fishing, excellent. Just he could see things that I couldn't, but he used to use long hook links.
Yeah.
So that's where it's always stayed in my head. I thought, if it's good enough for John, it's good enough for me. But you are 100% right. And then I see other guys using 2-foot ones.
Yeah.
And I never know
Back
when
of the wind into the wind.
Yeah. I never know when to strike.
No.
Do I let the float go? Do I let the line? Yes,
Well, I want to talk to you about that. If we have time, we'll do it now.
Yeah,
If not, we'll do it a bit later on. But this is the hook arrangement. And unlike most hair rigs, we saw this the other week on the chub rig, the hook is bait's tight to the hook. Tight to the hook, because I suppose when a fish takes it...
Well, you want the whole lot to go in, don't you? Hook, bait, everything.
In one go.
Yeah.
And it goes in, not like the fish is sucking it in like it does off the bottom. It's swallowing a load of water.
Yeah.
And hoping the bait's in it, because it can't see it at the last minute, like we can't, because their eyes are in the wrong place. So it's... And
I do see guys using quite long hairs.
Yeah.
And really bright fluoro pop-ups. And you think, well, that just must look so sort of alien to the fish, but they catch them.
Yeah,
and I think the key thing is to get them confident in the feeding, and then they'll take anything.
Why is the bait square? Because I know you create it from a round pop-up.
Yeah, these are just these are monster tiger nut pop-ups. These are, and Terry uses these because
Terry
Hearn.
Yeah.
Sorry, and they're a great colour for being very visual on the surface, and they're very buoyant. And it isn't really the smell or anything. It's everything about it. And all I do is I don't want it to be round and quite large, because that size bait is too big for that size hook. So I just trim all the corners off like so, into a little cube, and then I'll thread it onto the hair.
And that stays buoyant even with the shell off?
Yeah, if you could cast this about all day long, seriously. You know, I've very rarely, in my obviously extensive knowledge of floater fishing, because normally after an hour I've given up because I've got the raging ump and I'm wound up. But no, they don't come off, and you would think they would, but you know.
So I think we'll accept then that although you caught that lovely fish for us, fishing on the top isn't your forte.
I should do it more, as we all should.
But you're not bad at fishing on the deck.
Yes.
And this is a fairly classic rig. I'm going to lay it out there on the table. You should have brought your dustpan and brush.
Well, that is really messing with me.
But there's one in your bivvy, isn't there? You do? Yeah, you do. Yeah, it does have one in his bivvy.
With camo tape on so the fish can't see it, obviously.
Now, this is the helicopter rig. It's quite a long hook length for a helicopter rig. Is there a reason for that?
I just like long hook. I always have used longer than average hook lengths because everybody else uses short ones, so I just like to be a bit different.
OK. Look at the construction of the rig. The lead's on the end, obviously. There's a bit of sleeve there and a short distance between the two beads. But I better emphasise these are safety beads, so that will slide up.
Yeah, that'll move.
This is lead core, so it nails it to the bottom.
Yeah.
And this will slide up.
Yeah.
So should the line break, and the leg gets snagged, so the fish isn't tethered.
Yeah, it's totally
slide
safe.
up. Yeah. Absolutely safe rig, OK?
Yeah.
And just explain to us the hook lengths.
The hook link is, it's a coated braid, and all I've done is peel the coating off with my teeth, because everybody seems to use coated hook links at the minute. So again, just to be quite different, and it's something that, you know, good pal of mine, Ian Russell, does as well. He uses a lot of braid, supple braid, because not a lot of people use it. So as you can see, that is very supple, and it flies into the fish's mouth. And if that gets me another few bites over the course of the year, it's worth doing.
I think, though, we better emphasise that if you're going to use very supple braid, you want something to keep it straight on the bottom.
Yeah, I mean, that's just rig putty. You can use sink as the sort of purposely designed things you can thread on now. I use putty because I can get it neater and I like shaping it perfectly.
I know you do, yeah.
And as you can see, the gaps are completely equal just to match the OCD.
No, that's right.
Just, again, with the braid, I always put a little bit of foam or a little PVA bag on. Because it's so supple, it has a tendency to want to tangle. So some sort of foam or stick.
Laying out.
Yeah. And it'll catch on anything. So a little bag or anything like that.
And if you do it all right, you might finish up with something like that.
Yeah, you might do, yeah. That's a French fish.
Is it?
From a recent trip. So a very English-style rig.
Yeah, an English-looking fish.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what gives it away for me, the tail. It's got a pointed tail, and most carp that size wouldn't have pointed tails. It's something the French fish have got.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can see there. What does that weigh, that one?
I think that's 43, that is. Wow. Which, again, it's a beautiful fish, but for French standards, it's quite a small carp now. You know, everybody's wanting 70s and 80s, and big fish are popping up all over the place, aren't they? You know, so... But yeah, a very English-style approach, and I think that's where a lot of people can go wrong when they go to France. They think, oh, I've got to use a size 4 or got a size 2 shark hook and fill it in with bait. Well, just fish as you would fish in England, and you'll catch them.
Yeah.
You know? And actually, I wouldn't just pile 10 kilos of maggots in or whatever. He would. He feeds the swim delicately and builds it.
You know, I've got this rule that I try and adopt when I go fishing, and it's do what you know, not what you think you know.
Yes.
And I think it makes such a difference.
Yeah.
If you're doing something you're confident in, you're happy in, you can find the fish. You've said to Watercraft, fish are going to be in the same places in France as are in England. They've got to follow the wind or not follow the wind. Sit on the northeast bank. If you don't know where to go, sit on the northeast bank because it's the warmest bank. It's obvious, mate.
I think a lot of my friends who are good anglers, they stick to what they know, like you've said.
Stick to
a couple of 3 rigs that will get them around every situation. They don't deviate that much. But a good angler's... The difference between a good angler and a slightly less ability is they know when to change.
Exactly.
That's what they know.
That's the difference. Stillwater fishing on commercial fisheries has been very good indeed, verging on the brilliant. Those that are heavily stocked with match-sized carp are producing some staggering catches, either on floating or baits fish shallow. The larger fish invade the margins as the day wears on, so don't ignore that either. If you want to avoid the carp, fish maggot and feed lightly for some real quality roach, and big numbers of them. Soft pellet fished over ground bait on the pole will produce skimmers, tench and crucian. And the more specialised carp anglers still zigs rigs and fishing shallow or fishing on the top even, I was thinking, is it?
Yeah, I mean, when we were at Earl's View, the water was really, really warm, so I can't imagine the fish being far away from that. You know, it was only 6.5 foot deep in most places, but zigs and spodding a slop over the top will work. I don't do it, it's very messy and it goes all over your back, so I tend not to do that. I'll fish a static zig on a bit of foam. But anywhere in the top couple of foot, you know, it's... I'm down at the juniors at Linear, helping out there this coming week, and you can guarantee zigs will feature massively. And either a sloppy mix or, you know, tiny 1-stroke 2 mil scalded pellets because they sink. You know, they sink very slowly.
And you spun those out, will you?
Yes, and again, I'll use that, it's not messy.
Exactly right, Well, I'll tell you what I prefer. I think when you spud, you get that fallout of bait a third of the way out, and unless you're going to fish 2 swims, I don't, you know. Anyway, this is your floater rig, but I suppose if you switch that for a bomb, for an inline weight, it's also your zig rig.
Of course,
And where would you start fishing? Would you start it a foot under the surface, or 4 foot off the bottom, or 8 foot deep?
If I'm not spodding over the top, which I tend not to, I will fish within 3 foot of the surface. But say Earl's View, 6.5 foot, I would start at 4, perhaps 5 foot.
Off the bottom?
Off the bottom. Okay. It's weird with zigs that I never go from halfway down, I always go halfway up.
Halfway up,
and I remember Tommy Maker at Oxley's, when there was snow on the ground, he was catching on 4 foot zigs in 13 foot of water. Now, I wouldn't have caught a carp that day because I never go down, I always go up.
See, the thing is though, mate, 8 foot is a real comfort zone for fish in the winter. For some reason, if the water's deep or deeper, they love to sit 8 foot under the surface. It's just a comfortable level. Trout, carp, they all do it. And that's a real good place to start. Start 8 foot down. Anyway, I've been having a little rummage through your rig box, which I'm wont
not that
to do.
comfortable with this, people going in there. Because you won't pin them back in exactly the same position that you took them out of.
But this, I think, is a Medusa rig, isn't it? Or something
it's a
like
clean Medusa rig because they're fake maggots.
Fake maggots. Now, you talked about using a longer hook length. Here, is a really short one. That's what, 8-9 centimetres maybe?
Yeah, yeah.
3-4
For me,
inches?
that is very short.
Yeah, and the construction of the rig, is that soft braid again or coated?
Okay, yeah,
soft braid.
Yeah.
But you've got, these are buoyant, I take it.
They're actually little discs, and I think there's 3 discs, and they're just pulled onto a hair, and there's a hair stop in place.
Yeah.
And again, because I won't thread maggots because they'll burst and go all over my fingers, that is a cheat way. And people say they don't work the same as real maggots. Well, if a carp can tell that isn't real, then we're
You're
all
not gonna catch
no,
that
exactly.
one, no.
They aren't rocket scientists, are they? But the short rig is braid, so when they're coming in and sucking all the maggots up, they're going to suck that in, surely.
PVA bag with the maggots?
I would fish that on a helicopter and just pull the hook round. The maggot bag is hanging underneath, so you pull the rig and, Rob Mayling style. And put the hook into the bag. So.
Summer or winter rig?
Again, primarily winter.
Okay.
Certain waters you won't get a bite on.
Now this one, I thought you've made a ricket here, because when you look at that hair, I'll hold it there, that is exceptionally long. Even if you put a boilie on it, it's still a very, very long hair. Why would you use a hair of that length?
You just want, I mean, that's quite a large hook. That's a size 4. And again, that is only a 15mm pop-up. I know it's just for, you would just pick. I would put a 20mm bottom bait on that.
Would you?
But I want the separation so the rig can work. I want the separation from the hook to the top of the bait to be in relevance of the size of the hook to the size of the bait. Yeah. And again, the coating that is peeled back, so it's got. You don't want that boilie right next to the hook when you're fishing on the bottom.
And if it's a small hook, the fish is going to miss it.
Yeah. It's a big mouthful, it's a big hook, and it's a big bait, so which means it will be harder for them to spit out.
Fantastic.
It's proper old-fashioned carp fishing.
Old school carp fishing,
but,
size 4s and 2s, 1 O's, 2 O's even, with the old potato days.
And again, if it's weedy, do you really want to be fishing for £40 carp with a size 10 hook and a 10mm? No, because if you hook it, you're probably going to lose it,
Well, you might.
Big bit of metal, big mouth, doesn't come out as easy, does it? So it's just being able to adapt. And where there's weed, I like to use a big hook. And since I've started, I don't think you'll get as many bites, and there's people that say that, small hooks, you'll get more bites. But if I can catch the right fish, I don't want to catch 20 fish. Exactly. I want to catch the one that I want. So a big hook, in my opinion, is better. Give it some movement. Give the rig enough movement. To
Common sense, mate.
Yeah,
Common
pretty much,
sense. Time's caught up with us again, I'm afraid. Stay in touch with us on Twitter and the website. You can find lots of our films as well as other information on there. And keep those emails coming in with your questions and young angler photos. Thanks for coming in. It's been great to see you, mate.
Pleasure.
Always good fun. Next week, the focus is on sea fishing, and my guest will be shore specialist John Popplewell. We'll have action from a recent shark trip I had and our Young Angler of the Month Winners' Day. That's all in next Friday's programme. The first showing's at 7 o'clock on Sky Sports 2. Please make sure you join us. Don't forget, we're also available on demand every week in the Sky Sports section of Catch Up. Loads of past episodes on there as well. So have a great week out there on the bank. Tight lines. Thanks, mate. Well done. Tight.
Watch all 6 Sky Sports channels on your mobile and online.